He was young, handsome, and a brilliant ice skater. He had everything going for him, including all of the adoring fans that he could have ever hoped for. Yet, Kyle Willowby had been found murdered in his dressing room. He was about to retire from the spotlight, so what could have gone wrong? Why? Who? How?
Hello there, it's Detective DJ, and welcome to another week of our Crime Crushers. And I hope that everyone is doing fine, and I hope that everyone enjoyed last week's episode as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. This week, it's going to be a very interesting week, a little different episode we have in mind for you. It's called The Ice Skater's Last Invitation. But before moving on, let's just reintroduce you to our team here. Dr. Shay Harrington, who is always ready with her pronouncements as to what the murderer was thinking, why he did it, and why they chose that specific location to do it. We have Dr. Ryan Martini, who is our crime scene specialist. We have Dr. Nicholas Gasquet, who is our pathologist. We have our good friend Chip Sanderson, who is the crime scene investigator and someone who always comes up with very interesting tidbits and reports for us to look out for and to review. And finally, Alex Kirchhoff, our young sleuth and computer whiz. So, without much ado, and you've already heard the description to this specific episode, let's dive into it and see what we can come up with for this week. We're going to start with the crime scene that Dr. Ryan has brought to us. And we go to the crime scene where everyone is crowded around the still figure of Kyle Willowby. Kyle is slumped backwards on a long red bench, and his head is towards left angles and towards the wall. So it's at left angles and towards the wall. His curly blonde hair is quite damp, and much of his hair is matted with fresh red blood. Kyle is dressed in his shirt and underwear, and his feet are bare. Looks as if poor young Kyle has been stabbed. On the floor close by lies a bloody knife, and there's blood everywhere. A horrible, horrible scene for the crime scene guys to be greeted with. Kyle Willowby is dead. Now, standing beside him is Kyle's brother, and he's crying, and he's sobbing very quietly, and Kyle's wife, Melissa, is also standing close by, but she is sobbing more openly. Kyle's ice skates are under the bench with a rolled-up damp towel, and his ice skating costume lies in a corner of the room. On the opposite bench is his equipment bag, and this bag contains his wallet, some towels, and some toiletries. And next to the equipment bag, there's another damp towel, all on the opposite bench, across from where Kyle's body lies. Also on that bench is a blow dryer. I don't know if Kyle was trying to blow dry his hair or what was going on, but this is what the crime scene looks like. Now, in another corner of the room hangs Kyle's evening suit, and it's neatly placed and folded on a clothes rack. And under the clothes rack are his socks and shoes. Just inside the door, there are two special agents, and Kyle's bodyguard has also been murdered. His body lies in the middle of the room, and people are milling around outside. Some are trying to enter, but the police are holding them back. Now, let's see what Dr. Shay has to tell us. Dr. Shay thinks that the murderer chose to do this because they wanted to do it in Kyle's dressing room. And the perfect occasion, according to Dr. Shay, is that the murderer chose to do this after Kyle Willoughby's last invitation performance. And the victim's reason for having been where he was found, he had just given his last ice skating performance of his career. So, we have a crime scene, we have a perspective profile of what the murderer might have been thinking as to why it was done there. Now, let's just see what possible motives there could have been for the killing of a young, successful ice skater such as Kyle Willoughby. According to our buddy Chip Sanderson, could it have been a settling of accounts? He thinks that someone has also threatened to murder Kyle because of a settling of events. Or could it have been for revenge? According to Chip, he has identified the following characters. Could it have been Kyle's bodyguard, Benny? But Benny was also murdered, so how would that make sense? Could it have been Jacob's associate Max Finucci? Remember that Jacob was the brother of Kyle? Or could it have been someone in Melissa's company? Melissa is Kyle's wife, and this is what Chip is thinking. Let's go to the investigation and see what Chip has turned up for us. This crime is filled with secrets and persons having a lot of them, a lot of secrets, and persons leading double lives. Jake and Kyle Willoughby were very close brothers, and younger brother Kyle was a very high-profile ice skater. Older brother Jake was his manager. And unknown to each other, they both led double lives. Jake was hooked on loan sharking and gambling, and Kyle worked as a programmer for a spy agency. How he ever got to do this while practicing for his ice skating career, we'll never know, but that was what he did. Kyle's wife, Melissa, worked as a researcher for a very well-placed company. It was a pharmaceutical company that she worked for. She had recently discovered a huge cover-up within her company, and this involved hundreds of millions of dollars. It also involved insider trading and fraud. She had told a friend about what she had uncovered, and her friend had advised her to go to the IRS and the relevant authorities to report what she knew. Melissa had not told her husband Kyle what she had found out, but had only done so just a few hours before he was killed. This was supposed to be Kyle's last appearance on the ice, and he had just given the performance of his life. He had called this performance the last invitation. And after his performance, a huge party had been planned in his honor. It was supposed to take place in the Grand Revolving Restaurant, which was located a few stories above the arena. It was supposed to be on the top floor of that complex where he had just skated. And it was going to take place right after his performance. A few hours before his last performance, Kyle and Melissa had shared their secrets with each other, and they had decided to leave town as soon as possible. Kyle said that he was going to ask his employers to help them get away. Older brother Jake was in deep financial woes. He was involved in loan sharking and gambling, but this had not stopped him from being an excellent manager to Kyle. Jake had become heavily in debt, and he had borrowed heavily from his associate Max Finucci. Now, Max was threatening to kill Kyle if Jake did not pay back his loan to him. Jake never told Kyle about his troubles and woes because he didn't want to worry him. He was also very ashamed of himself and didn't want his brother to know what kind of a person he was. He felt that he had let Kyle down. Unknown to Melissa, her friend had reported what Melissa had told him to someone else. He had told a higher up within the company, and soon the top echelons of Melissa's company knew what Melissa knew. This meant trouble for Melissa. So, a hit was put out on Melissa. Kyle Willoughby was a left-hander. His bodyguard was a right-hander. All these facts are what our friend Chip has collected for us. And now we're going to look a little bit more at the suspects that Chip has identified. Benny. He was a bodyguard that had been hired by Kyle. Max Finucci was an associate of Jake, and maybe someone in Melissa's company. So Chip has identified 3 suspects for us. I wonder which one really did it. According to Dr. Nicholas Gasquet, the cause of death was as follows. Kyle had died from a fatal stab wound to his heart, and he had also sustained serious head injuries. He had died within minutes of his stab wound, and bits of skin was found under his fingernails. And he had also been found with defense wounds at the back of his hands. Kyle's killer had sustained a broken neck, and he had died almost instantly. He had sustained a punch to his right eye, and his left kneecap had also been broken. My, this is turning out to be very, very horrible. But we will soldier on and see what next is in the bag for us. Well, I've looked at all the reports handed in by Chip, by Dr. Shea, by Dr. Gasquet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be right here, but I'm going to take a stab at this, so to speak, see what we come up with. It seems as if Kyle's killer had attacked him while he sat on his bench, and Kyle seemed to have been caught unawares. The two had fought, and Kyle had put up a very brave fight. However, the bigger man had quickly overpowered him. Not before Kyle had inflicted an injury of his own to the killer. As Kyle's killer started to leave, he thought he saw a movement behind him. But as he turned, someone jumped him, and Kyle's killer did not have time to react. He had been taken by surprise, and in the brief struggle, Kyle's killer's knife had fallen to the floor, and he was quickly overpowered. His neck was broken, and the attacker had made very sure that both Kyle and his killer were dead before he departed. Well, it's got a lot for you to think about here, folks. But let me just summarize the crime scene for you once more and the suspects, okay? So, we have a crime scene of young Kyle Willoughby, very high-profile ice skater who's been found dead in his dressing room. His head is at left angles towards the wall. He was found lying on his bench. All kinds of paraphernalia are around him. His blow dryer, his equipment bag, damp towels, blow dryer. In one corner of the room is his evening suit. His ice skating costume is lying on the floor. In another corner of the room, his socks and shoes are neatly tucked under the clothes rack where his suit is hanging. And his hair, his blonde hair, is all matted with fresh, damp blood. And we have a scene where his brother Jake is standing by just sobbing, and so is his wife Melissa. 2 agents are guarding the door, and people are trying to get in but are being held back by the police. This is the crime scene. Our suspects? We have 3 suspects in mind. One of them is sort of unknown. The other two are Benny, his bodyguard, and Kyle had hired this bodyguard. Max Finucci, who is the associate of Jake Willowby, who is Kyle's brother, and someone in Melissa's company. Now, before we go any further, Alex has questions for you that we feel will help you to solve this crime. Alex always has questions, and we'll see what Alex has to say to you, and after his questions are posed, we'll come back with some more information for you. So here's Alex.
Who really killed Kyle Willowby? A right-hander or a left-hander? Whose skin was found under Kyle's nails? Who had the most to gain from killing Kyle? Could there have been some sort of conspiracy?
Okay, now that you've heard Alex's questions, let's continue on, see if we can solve this crime. Now, about the killer. It was a right-hander that had killed Kyle. Kyle was a left-hander, and he had inflicted injury to his killer, injuring his right eye. Benny was a right-hander. Kyle's head was at left angles to the wall. Benny's skin was found under Kyle's nails. And Benny was also the one who had the most to lose financially, believe it or not. And he had the most to gain from killing Kyle. Very, very unexpected here. There was some sort of conspiracy between Benny and somebody. So who really did what? The straw poll doesn't really tell us much this week, but the final outcome was this. After Benny had been hired to protect Kyle, Benny was bribed to kill Kyle and Melissa by someone in Melissa's company. It had taken a heck of a lot of money to bribe Benny because he had really liked Kyle and Jake, but money had won out in the end, and it was planned that after Benny had done the job, he too would be killed to shut him up. Benny's killer had watched as Benny had killed Kyle. Then he had killed Benny and disappeared into the night. So that's how this has ended. Very unfortunate for poor old Kyle, and for Jake, and for everyone else. Conspiracy all the way. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Ice Skater's Last Invitation. Enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. We wish you a very great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now, and have a great day.